Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today I'm talking to Donna Jennings, or Dr. Donna Jennings, and we're going to talk about sex. So if you think that that's something that should be swept under the carpet, or you don't want to, this show isn't for you, okay? I just wanted to say that up front. Donna, I always ask the people, my guests who come on, to get the advert in up front. So where can people get hold of you?
Well, let me just make one correction for you. That's Donna Jennings, also known as Dr. J, and people can find me at drjauthor.com.
Thank you. And so first and foremost, how did you get into this? How did you get into this job?
I love that question, Tim. Most people plan, decide what they're going to do, and sometimes life just hands you interesting things. I'm sure my parents were not happy that I dropped out of school. University, I took a specific job working for a company packing condoms. And
Right.
from that direction, life took interesting turns.
Right. Because one of the things, because I always ask the question, because I don't have children, but my business partner does, and he has his eldest is 20, and she always says to him, "Daddy, there's lots of white male people that are in power, who, and I don't. That's not someone that I want to be. I'm a female. How is it that I can get to be and to be someone because I'm a female person?" So people looking into and hearing you today, what was it that you've done to get to where you are? What are the exams that you've passed, and what's the journey that you've taken on?
Well, I have 3 degrees, a health education degree specifically in sexuality. I have a master's degree in agency counseling, and I have a PhD in marriage and family therapy with a specialty in sexuality. So my journey has been working in different agencies until I went out on my own with my own practice for providing sex therapy. I consulted with medical professionals, urologists, OBGYN, family practice, folks who don't get any training in how to approach sexuality for their patients when they come in. That was a component of my work. And I provided sexuality education to the communities where I lived as a way for people to be enlightened and to work for having holistic sexual wellness in their life.
And you're a great. I mean, we've called this discussion the importance about having discussions about sex, and I mean, you are so passionate about that, aren't you?
I am. And I have to tell you, this month has been really interesting because Netflix introduced a docu-series called The Principles of Pleasure. And whenever we talk about sexuality, pleasure is a component that we absolutely need to discuss. And it's bittersweet watching it. It's exactly wonderful to see where the new science is and the things that we've discovered, especially for women's bodies. But bitter in terms of, I've been doing this for 46 years, and some of the things that I heard the people say about, there's shame and embarrassment and guilt, and this is how I feel. And we're in 2022, and that's what people are still saying. And they were saying that in 1976 when I started my career.
And it only took 2 minutes for someone to try and put something smutty onto the chat, and I blocked them. So we you can't. I've blocked it, so it's gone. So but it's yes, it's amazing how in 2022 things are still like they are, which is that we kind of hide it away in a we brush it under the carpet.
Yeah, yeah. And the hard part is setting up spaces for people to have conversation, permission to actually talk about the topic. Because when we look at the relationship we have with ourselves or the relationships that we want to have with other people, we may not have the language, we may not have the understanding about how our bodies work, how to communicate information. And a really sad part about sexuality is that 50% of the population is female, And when we look at what we know about sexuality, it's pretty much been based on men's bodies rather than women's bodies. And there's so much information about where our bodies are different. And for instance, in 2005 was the first time in history that the clitoral body has been identified and outlined by a neuroscientist in Australia, Dr. Helen O'Connell. This is like, we've had so many inventions over the years. How is it that we haven't been able to understand how the female body is put together? And one part of that is that, excuse me, the clitoris is only there for pleasure. It has no other job. And, we kind of keep people in their place when we don't give them the information that they need to be able to express sexuality in a way that fits for them.
And I know I've been to lectures about sports psychology and that, and I can't remember when, but it's only just recently that they've actually started using sports psychology for women. Everything to do with sports has always been about men.
Yeah.
And it's something very, very similar. They pick some students and they happen to all be men. So to ask the question, so how is it that we can create an environment so we can have a safe discussion about sex?
Well, Tim, you're the champion. You did it today. Part of the process.
Well, I'd said before I've put myself out my comfort zone, and I'm still not sure I'm going to say the word clitoris yet, but maybe it's a first.
There you go. But part of the process is for us to make connections like this, and for you to see that I'm a regular person who has information that I can share. And by you doing this for your audience, they have the opportunity to see that we have provided permission for this to be a topic that we can talk about. I have provided a specific piece of information. 2005 is when we have information about the clitoral body. We want to help dispel myths and misinformation and put factual information in there for people. And so it may be as simple as someone saying, I saw this on Tim's feed. It becomes a teachable moment where they can go home and say, you'll never guess what I saw on LinkedIn today. There was a woman talking about.
It's a first, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a way to get a conversation going. And then when people have resources, they can start asking questions like the Netflix series, The Principles of Pleasure. It is a spectacular 3-part series that talks about women's bodies, women's minds, and relationships, and all of the things that people haven't been taught over time. This is how we can do that. We create these spaces ourselves at this little grassroots level. Are doing it together, you and me.
Yeah, I have my father's best friend. Unfortunately, he and his wife are dead, but they had 4 children, and she wasn't told anything about sex even until the first night that she went for her wedding. She had a wedding night, and she didn't even know. And someone said, "You know what's going to happen?" She said, "No, I haven't got a clue." And she ended up with 4 children. She still says, "I don't know how that happened."
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that occurs that we don't even give credence to the idea that our bodies work in a particular way to share that information because of the family values, the cultural kinds of things, or institutional scripts that we've been given. And a lot of it is, don't talk about this. This is important. We keep this undercover. I think about all the systems of the body, and, we can talk about all of them. But when we get to this system, it's not something anybody's comfortable with. And it's something that we all have to learn. We practice. So many people ask me the question, am I normal? And we have to be able to have places where people can address that and talk about what makes sex positive in their life, and then how they can have a mindset to get it the way they want it to be.
And what is normal?
Well, normal is pretty much the individual.
Yeah.
And, we look at an individual person, we listen to how they put sex together for them, what they're looking for in their life. When people ask me about body parts, is my body part normal? I say, does everyone have the same size nose? Do our earlobes look the same? Do our feet look the same? Everything about our bodies are different. Why would we think our genitals are going to be any different. So some of this starts with the external direction, and then we move into that internal revolution. So we can start changing how we think about ourselves, how we see ourselves, and identify what's comfortable and what feels good for us.
So you run a session on Twitter Spaces, don't you?
I do every Wednesday at noon Eastern time. It's called the Sexuality Space. We'll be celebrating our year anniversary next month.
Yeah, that's amazing, Donna.
I
That's
know,
beautiful.
I'm really excited about it. And actually, this week I'm starting the discussion on the three episodes of the pleasure principle. So people
Right.
can come in this Wednesday and learn all about what the first episode had to do with the bodies.
So what is it? What is it that you talk about on your Twitter Spaces? Is it and how do people access that?
Well, one of the things that I do is I promote healthy conversations about sexual wellness.
Yes.
And I do that in many different directions. I may have CEOs of sexual wellness or sex tech companies come in and I interview them. They talk about their products. I may do something specific that someone has said, I really want to have a conversation about lubes. I don't know anything about lubes. So I do pretty much edutainment. Here's factual information for you. Let's have a discussion. What questions do you have? That sort of thing. And people can go to my timeline on Twitter. I have a pinned tweet, and it tells you right there where the sexuality space is. And I have all the information there on the timeline.
Fantastic. And that's it's a discussion. So it's a classic social audio where you will be saying things. People can come on the stage, but it's a discussion that people can join into.
Absolutely. And sometimes I can even put in factual information in tweets, and then they have tweets available to them where they can have resources and they can go read that information after they leave the space.
And do you ever have discussions about the menopause?
Oh, yes. That's one of my personal favorite topics.
So I was just about to take a drink because I thought you were going to say something. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that all of our bodies change, don't they? As we get, from when we're young to we go through puberty and as we get older. And I guess the discussions that we have to have with our partners need to take into that account. Need to take that into account as well.
Yeah, and it's the evolution of growing and aging. Nothing is the same as it was 25 years ago. And I always like to use this Boston pediatrician, T. Barry Brazelton, always talked about when you bring a child in, let's tell you what you can expect from this age to our next visit. Here are all the things that can go on. We don't do that with sexuality, and people would be so better served if that was a component that they could get when they go to their medical checkups, to get information about what they can expect the changes to be and then how to talk about that. With menopause, you're dealing with so many different things, from depletion of hormones, how to do that replacement. What do you do with vaginal dryness? What's the best lubrication? What medications are being offered at this time? And then how do you accommodate those things for the type of sexuality you'd like to share with a partner?
And you said something just earlier on, which is, you said it really quickly, and I wanted to go in and pick that up. So you said a phrase or a word, which was sex tech.
Yes, sex tech.
So tell us what sex tech is, because I guess it's not like fintech or it's sex. What's sex tech?
Well, we're using technology to have this conversation right now. And there are many different places that are using technology to share information about sexuality. For example, if you were to go to Apple or Google, you could get on the Moan app, which is a specific sexuality social audio app to talk about sexuality. Anything that is an application that you can get. I work for a company called Rosie, which is a sexual wellness platform for women, and they do everything through their app. You can get sex coaching, you can get sex therapy, you can be in educational classes. I'm the editor for their erotica, because one of the things that they've learned is that through research, we know that the mind is so powerful that it can allow, with imagination of stories being read, we can have arousal, desire, lubrication, and orgasm. And this is all non-medical prescription, an easy way to help people out. So there are so many different ways technology is coming into play, whether it's vibrators, whether it's applications for conversations, whether it's VR, we're going to put, headsets on and visualize what's going on. So many different ways.
And I'm sure that the sex market, I mean, VR will take off if the sex market, I was going to say embraces it. I didn't mean to say that. But VHS video was the reason why the VHS format took off was because the sex industry was using that particular format. And I'm sure the same with VR. And I had a conversation with someone recently about how the COVID and remoteness had changed the sex tech industry, which is the fact that you can be in separate places, but using an app and using the software and using the hardware.
Yeah, and it could be I have the toy on this side and you have the controls over there, and we're working back and forth in what we're creating together.
Because I know that the particular person that I was interviewing was a cybersecurity expert, and the messaging basically wasn't encrypted,
right?
And all of the messages then got put on the internet, which
so we definitely deal with privacy in any number of directions, and because of that shame and embarrassment, I think it's even more difficult for people to consider what would happen for me if that information got out.
So for the average person watching, what is it that they can do to first and foremost get more informed?
More informed. Follow me on Twitter. Join in conversations for sexuality. When you go to a bookstore, when you go to Amazon, look at what sexuality books are. There are so many great resources today. I think about Justin Lehmiller and Dr. Nicole Prouse as some of the best researchers of sexuality. Follow them on Twitter. They're the ones who are providing the cutting edge for creating what sex research is looking like and what information that we can gather. But mainly at home, it's about starting the conversation, beginning to identify what it is that you want from sex and pleasure. How can you have that conversation with yourself? I'm always of the put the oxygen mask on first, then help other people, because you want to be clear about what it is that you like and want before you can share that with another.
And that's about making sure that you have that open and honest conversation, I guess, and creating a safe environment where you can where you feel that you can have that. And I guess that then comes down to trust and things like that, which we should have with our partners anyway.
Yeah. And it's baby steps too, because like I said, if we use this, somebody sees this today, it might be I saw this conversation, I want to think about it, and then I'd like to have a conversation with you, and then break it up into little parts about what that has to do with, because we've not been trained in how to have this conversation. So it'll be little baby steps to start with.
And I think the great thing about social media is that we can kind of do this. People can follow you and nobody will know.
Right.
People can join your Twitter Spaces and nobody will know, because you could be on any podcast or anything like that. So it's that you still have the confidentiality around it, don't you?
Pretty much. I mean, if someone comes in, we do see an avatar. I mean, they may not be who they are in that particular picture, but they don't have to speak. They can sit there quietly and listen and gather the information that they would like. And, sometimes that's hard for people if they think they're going to be identified as looking for sexuality information, that they might be intimidated to be in a space. And that's why the Moan app is a really neat thing, because it has filters so that you can come in anonymously and you can work yourself to calm down and relax and get ready to have the conversation.
Yeah, there's a really good app called Calm, which is about meditation and that. So I guess the Moan app is kind of is similar to that, but from a sexuality point of view.
That's absolutely right.
And the other thing is that you've got 2 books coming out, haven't you?
I do. And, I've changed. I think evolution happens for everything that we're doing. I never expected to be an erotica writer, much less an editor. One of the books that I have coming out is How to Write Scenes with Sex, a writer's sexuality guide. And the other one is a women's journal called Purple Sex and Love Beyond Your Dreams, a wellness journal to explore your sexual self. And those
Okay.
will be coming out at the end of the year.
They're coming out at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that will be available on Amazon or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Brilliant. Donna, it's been fantastic to go on a journey with you today, and talk about sex and stuff like that. And I think, what I wanted to do was just start a conversation, as you said, and try and provide some trying to provide some advice, some places for people to go so they can actually start having these conversations, because there are lots of people out there that are not like you, that are able to talk about sex freely, and it's kind of locked away in a cupboard somewhere or something like that. So I really appreciate
Tim, you were a sex pioneer. You put yourself out there and you showed people you can lead the way in that process.
Well, thank you. And maybe I need to put that on my LinkedIn profile or something.
There you go. I think you should.
I'm one of the things about these discussions is that I try and put myself outside of my comfort zone. And today I did that. And I've been not looking forward to the discussion with you today, purely because I knew that I would be outside my comfort zone. But of course, the only way that you progress as an individual is to do that.
That's right.
And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight, Donna. It's been fantastic. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
You can follow me on my website, drjauthor.com, and you'll find all of my links at that location.
And on Twitter, you're
Dr. J Author, at Dr. J Author.
Brilliant. And your Twitter Spaces is every Wednesday, isn't it?
Every Wednesday at noon Eastern, yes.
Noon Eastern, right? Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay, Donna, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to me about sex. It's been it's been highlighted, just been amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, you were spectacular, and thank you so much for having me and being a sex pioneer with me.